Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest, I'm having flashbacks to the time. It's a long time ago now when I parachuted from one of these. That's incredible!
Wow.
Well, gentlemen, what a beautiful aircraft you have here at Duxford.
Truly is.
It truly is. Are 4D ready for duty? Tell us about this plane.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. Before I start telling you about the airplane, how about I tell you a little bit about the Commemorative Air Force?
Yes,
yeah, sure.
Why not?
And,
Brilliant.
you know, that's the reason.
Which is world famous, I have to say.
World
It's
famous.
Fabulous.
That's the reason that we're here,
Yeah.
right?
The Commemorative Air Force, it's all about using these aircraft, isn't it? They're all active.
It's really about engagement.
Yeah.
I mean, in the CAF, we educate, we honor, and inspire. And that's all in relation to reminding people the sacrifices that were made in World War II. By everyone, not just the aviators, but by the people who built these wonderful aircraft and designed them, or the people that produced the parts for these. And that's not just in the United States. That was the partnership between the United States and the UK.
Yeah.
So we think this mission actually applies really well over here in the UK. And what we
I
do
agree.
in order to facilitate that is we own over 180 Warbirds. World
Can
War
you
II
believe
aircraft.
that?
Yeah, that's
Amazing.
That's just
180. It's an amazing collection. In that 180, we've got 125 of them flying, and the rest of them are in some state of restoration. And as you're
Amazing.
pointing out, absolutely, we go all the way from the 4-engine bomber, the B-29 Fifi, the B-24, you know, airplane that had a huge presence over here in the UK, C47s, all of the fighter line, P-51 Mustangs, Corsairs, Bearcats, Wildcats, P-47
So one of each,
Thunderbolts.
right? That's
We
what
got
you-
a little of everything. They're all national treasures, and a lot of them are unique, one-of-a-kind aircraft, and they all have some type of unique war history. For example, one of the airplanes I fly is the last flying WASP Squadron T6 trainer from Avenger Field in Sweetwater, Texas. And we've actually had 7 of those WASP pilots that learned to fly in that airplane in their 20s come back in their 70s and 80s and fly the airplane again and take a ride.
Oh, isn't that
and we
fantastic?
have all of them sign, you know, they autograph the baggage area, and we've got that
nice.
area protected. So, you know, think about that if you're 20 years old.
Oh, man.
And you're flying amazing airplanes like this, and then you get to come back later in life thinking there's no
Fabulous.
way you would ever do that again. But that's the type of thing that the CAF, that's our mission.
Right.
Our mission is to take people like that and get them out in front of the general public, get the airplanes out in front of the general public, and remind people what it takes to be great.
So tell us about Ready for Duty, because
Sure.
at a glance, I'm thinking it's a Dakota, it's a DC-3, it's a C47. You know, because after all, this type goes by many names, right?
It does.
But this is none of those things, right?
Well, you know, so it's interesting. They were developing some warplanes, but because the war ramped up so quickly, they had to turn to industry.
Yeah.
What do you already have?
Yeah.
And so Douglas had already built the DC-3 to kind of be the Gulfstream 650, the big wealthy travel airplane. When you were somebody of real worth, you would impress your friends by buying a DC-3 and outfitting with a leather interior. So the War Department comes to Douglas and says, hold on, wait a second. We could probably do about 20 different things with that airframe.
Yeah.
But what we'd like you to do is make a couple of modifications so that we can make it military capable.
But Glenn, just
Yeah.
think about this. When this first does its first flight as a DC-3 in, you know, one of the mid-30s.
Yes.
Think how futuristic that looks. Think how close we are to just pure fabric
Absolutely.
and biplanes and all the rest of it. And suddenly this comes out, which doesn't look so very different from a modern civilian liner.
Well, if you really think about that, just the time frame. So the Wright brothers first flew their airplane at Kitty Hawk in 1903.
Yeah.
And if we just move forward 30 years to 1933, so if you go on the internet and you look at what that airplane looked like, and you think about just 3 decades later, that you're looking at this, that, you know, standing behind
nuts,
us right
isn't
now,
it?
it is absolutely nuts. And so the pace of innovation in the aviation industry back then was further increased by the war effort.
Yeah.
You know, we basically went from Stearman primary trainers, right, and PT-19 primary trainers in World War I to pressurized 4-engine bombers, the B-29, in the space of about 10 years.
Yeah. Well, and here it's Gloucester Gladiators biplane fighter planes at the start of the war.
It's exactly the same thing.
Well, it lost a meteor at the end of it, or a jet aircraft.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I believe it's a Pablo Picasso quote that I've heard that said that all artists copy, great artists steal.
Yeah.
And so we were copying and stealing from each other all through the war effort, right? Yeah. I mean, the P-51 Mustang is basically based on the Spitfire. Yeah. And a re-engining of that is really what made that airplane the killer airplane that it became in World War II. So, you know, it was, the pace of innovation was amazing. This thing was absolutely an incredible innovation, and it looked sleek and modern, and it was, you know, it was the SpaceX of its day.
Yeah, and so that meant this airframe was really ready to be adapted and turned to lots of different tasks, right?
It was.
So I think the thing people know about well, I'll call it the Dakota.
No, please.
For the sake of argument.
Absolutely.
Is it's people parachute out of this. Supplies are dropped out of it. I mean, the last one of these I got into, I did jump out of, right?
Good for you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm a little nervous about getting
And you're
back
standing here healthy and strong, and you had the parachute obviously open.
I used to be 7 foot tall, but you know, they're known for that. They're known for towing gliders. They're known for all sorts of roles. But what's I mean, just looking closer,
it's a naval version.
It's a naval version.
Yeah, so there's really interesting kind of development in history here. So, you know, the War Department turns to industry and says, what do you got that we can use? And they see the DC-3 and they're like, you know what, that's almost there. That's 90% of the way there for us. And so what we need you to do is we're going to be carrying big loads, and we're going to be beating these things to death. And so what we need you to do is we need to structurally beef up the cargo floor. And so that's a difference between the C47 and the DC-3.
Right.
The other thing is we're going to be landing on a lot of unimproved landing strips.
Yeah.
So the Seabees come in and they plow a field.
Yeah.
But it's rough, and so we need you to beef up the landing gear.
So
we're
that
going to
needs
carry
to be
a
more
lot
robust.
of weight. The landing gear's got to be more robust. They want airplanes that they can operate anywhere, deliver anything, anytime, anywhere. And so what this thing really kind of started as, the C47, it was the semi-truck of the war effort, the airborne. If you could get it through that door that we'll go look at here shortly, if you could get it through that door, this thing would haul it. And so really it was conceived very originally, the C-47s, as the airplane that would supply the war. You know, and that's how you got things to people rapidly. Out on the front, you would carve out a runway that was filled with rocks and holes and stuff like that, and then you'd bring in C-47 after C-47.
Down, job done.
Just, exactly.
Or you'd cut a gap in the jungle and they'd drop stuff by parachute. Or even
also.
Straight from the door without parachutes.
Or you'd lay some bits, Hess.
Yeah. But you know, you could. She's so adaptable as an
absolutely, and so that brings us to the Navy.
Yeah.
Right. So now the Navy. This is actually, believe it or not, this is a Navy aircraft.
Right.
Right. And so the Navy looks at all the C-47s that were coming into the military and says, hey, we're going to cut a purchase order for 35 of those. And so they acquired 35 airplanes, and Navy has their own designation for airplanes. They had their own mission for the airplane. And the unique history of R-4D is that it was one of the 35 airplanes that went into the Navy that developed all of the technology, the techniques and tactics for hunting submarines.
Right.
And so if, and the walk around will see it, and you can maybe catch a glimpse of it back behind us. There are 2 depth charge racks underneath the airplane. So you had to find the submarine first. That's electronic warfare.
Yeah.
That's sensors. They were radar pods. So this was.
These are radar pods, aren't they?
No, these are actually antennas, and they're steerable antennas. But it turns out that the egg shape is one of the most aerodynamic shapes out there. And so if you're going to have an antenna that you want to reduce the drag on, you'll put it in something that's shaped like that. And what they were doing is they were trying to find how do you find submarines, and once you find submarines, how do you kill submarines? And so we don't have the records because they're classified, but of the little information that we do have, we know that those 35 airplanes do have 1 confirmed U-boat kill.
Right.
It's entirely possible the airplane you're standing in front of right now today might have been a part of, they would go out in packages of like 8 to 10 airplanes. They'd have a search pattern, and then they'd zero in on something, and everybody would come in and work as a pack. So R-4D may have actually been responsible for downing a U-boat in World War II.
That's fantastic.
So after that, the interesting thing about this particular airplane historically is that it became an experimental electronic warfare development platform. So now we're talking about signals intelligence, we're talking about jamming signals, we're talking about detecting things. So there was a lot of experimental work done and development work done with R-4D. that then led the airplane to the Berlin Airlift. So this airplane was in the Berlin Airlift.
No way.
And the records were classified, so we don't have all of the data on this. But what we surmise is that this airplane was not doing good. It was not bringing in relief supplies because it was an electronic warfare platform, and you could get very close to the Russian
having a
front.
Good listen.
It was
Good
having
snoop.
probably a good listen to some of the conversation that was
Flying
going
in
on
and out
with
with the
next
other
door.
Dakotas,
Yeah,
and
so-
so the
oh,
Russians
right.
would have known.
It's
no
part
better.
of the airstream. They know no
Exactly.
better, but they're having they're looking at what the Russian electronic.
Here's 20 airplanes that are bringing in candy for the kids.
Yeah.
And then there's this one airplane in the pack that maybe doesn't have a bunch of candy on it. So very interesting history with this airplane.
So we should talk about the engine.
Well, you know, if you're going to carry all of that weight and all that equipment, you're going to bring fuel to the front lines and whatever else that you get back into this thing, you got to have power.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you take something that works and you just continually make it bigger.
Yeah.
So these Wright 1380 engines each produce 1,200 horsepower individually.
Right.
So that's 2,400 horsepower total. And that's where, with the wing design, you get all of the lifting capacity of this airplane. Right? I mean, you're basically talking about an airplane that runs somewhere in the 26,000 to 28,000 pound range when it's fully loaded.
Right.
It takes a lot of horsepower to get that airplane off the ground. So round engines were where it's at. There's 2 rows of cylinders here. There's 7 in the front, 7 in the back. The Pratt & Whitney later, these engines powered so many different airplanes. And they scaled them from the 985, which is 450 horsepower, up to much bigger engines, like, for example, that power the B-29 Superfortress.
And then tell me, I mean, in terms of maintenance and everything, are they comparatively straightforward? I mean, all aero engines are complex, but...
You know, they are comparatively straightforward, and you'd be surprised at the number of these engines that are out there still flying today.
Yeah, amazing.
So there's there are manufacturers that overhaul these engines, and where they've run out of parts, they may get a parts making authority. So there's a lot of 985s around, right? 985s at 450 horsepower, for example. So they are complex in what they do, but there are so many of them that there are still shops out there that know how to work on them and maintain them.
You can get the parts.
We can still get parts. We can still get new overhauled engines.
Incredible.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. There are a couple of manufacturers in the U.S. that we rely on heavily for all the round engines that power our warbirds.
And so she can carry a heavy payload. What's the range like?
Well, you know, an airplane like this, it all depends on what the mission is.
Of course,
we can go into go fast mode, which means burning a lot of gas. The numbers off the top of my head, I would say that if we're in go fast mode, we're probably burning somewhere around 160 to 180 gallons per hour. Right. The airplane itself holds 800 gallons. Right. So in that sense, we'd be flying for 3.5 hours. We'd have reserves.
Okay.
Right? We would get someplace fast, but our range would not be all that good.
Okay, so say you're crossing the Atlantic.
If we're crossing the Atlantic, we're going to fly more in economy cruise mode, and we are going to burn significantly less fuel.
Nice.
So we're probably going to burn somewhere in the 50 to 75 gallons per hour.
But you're not in so much of a rush.
We're not in a rush, and in those, with the design of the airplane being so capable, what we're really looking for there is duration, endurance. How for a pound of fuel, how much kind of ground could we cover?
And it's easy to fly.
You know, you hear the phrase in this industry, it's a baby carriage.
Right.
It really is a baby carriage to fly. It's harder to taxi.
Right.
And as we get around to the back of the airplane, I'll explain as we look at the cargo door why it is that this airplane is more difficult to taxi than it is to fly.
Okay. But before we get to the tail, let's look at the. Let's take
a look at the landing gear, which is a unique feature of the C47 compared to the DC-3.
Okay.
As we mentioned earlier, this is a load hauling machine. It's a semi-truck of the air, and therefore they did have to make some modifications, not just to the gear structure itself and how it's designed, beef up all of these parts, but the weight of the airplane is really absorbed by the airframe itself. And how you beef up and mount the gear to the airframe also helps with its durability and its ability to operate off of unimproved rough landing strips. So there was a lot of work done here to make it the semi-truck of the year that it was back in the war. As we talked about, a lot of work we'll look at later on the inside in relation to beefing up the structure of the floor.
Okay.
And unique feature on this one.
Anti-submarine warfare.
Yeah, so, you know, R4D, it's a Navy airplane. As we talked about, it was a submarine killer and developed all those techniques. This airplane was outfitted with 2 drop racks for depth charges. Okay. And so we do fly some air shows. We have a couple of depth charges that we carry with us in a rack in the airplane. And at some of the air shows, we will mount the depth charges just to make the airplane look even more realistic as the R4D that it was.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
Right. Well, let's go and look inside. Should we go look inside the plane?
Let's go look inside.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. Why is taxiing so problematic?
Well, if you take a look at the airplane itself and you see how far that tail is from the actual main landing gear, and we think back to our, high school physics class. Yeah. Look at how big that tail is and how much area presents to the wind.
Yes.
So if you have any kind of a crosswind with this airplane while you're taxiing, that tail wheel back there unlocks when we taxi, so we can turn tight. With that tail wheel unlocked and the wind pushing hard against the tail, that big lever arm on the gear makes this thing very squirrely in gusty crosswinds.
Okay.
So the real challenge in learning how to fly this airplane, and the real mettle of a DC-30 C47 pilot, is can you taxi it on narrow turning taxiways.
Got it.
Okay.
But as you can see, as we're back here at the cargo door, the other unique feature about the C47 compared to the DC-3, since this was going to be used for paratroopers and it was going to be used for cargo, I mean, just look at the size of that door.
Yeah.
Where you're standing right now, it's huge. So you've got these 2 big clamshell doors, and then if you look at this door here, we can close both of these doors and just open the inner portion of this door for paratroopers to exit the airplane.
And you're
I see.
So it's a multi-purpose door.
You're complemented for paratroopers because there's a static line in here.
Absolutely. So if these doors were closed and we open up, we pulled the paratrooper plug basically, and we set that aside. What you would see when we get up in the airplane, we'll show you a little bit more.
That's just genius, isn't
you
it?
can put 21 paratroopers in these seats on either side of the airplane, and you'll also notice there are no cushions on those seats because it was the paratrooping gear that they sat on. Yeah, so they sat on their own cushion, and then up here the static line would be the thing that you don't want to rely on these people to pull their own ripcords. We want them to go out with a whole bunch of gear. Yeah. They don't have their hands free, and to be able to safely deploy a chute. Now, these airplanes would typically fly at 500 feet above the ground. Yep. So that static line jump, you weren't under the canopy very long.
No.
You were deployed in 2 or 3 seconds once you went out the door, and you were on the ground 15 seconds later.
Yeah, amazing.
And then you were collecting all your gear, and you were going to war.
Yeah. So I mean.
Less time in the air, the better.
But American paratroopers were issued with a reserve. You think, when are you ever going to pull that in that time?
I can't imagine that you have a lot of opportunity to react to a chute failure and then pull your reserve.
Especially if it's the night.
Absolutely.
You're dropping at night.
But the interesting thing about all of those gentlemen was they were the elite. They were the best of the best. The paratroopers were like the special forces, the special ops guys that all militaries have today. So this was a real prize. If you were the real gung-ho soldier and you really wanted to be the best of the best, you went to paratrooper school and you were jumping out of these things every day.
Yeah. Well, can we have a look on board?
Absolutely, we can. Be careful getting up the step.
Yep.
You might hang on to the edge there.
After you, Glenn.
All right, you got it.
It's a smell, isn't it?
See, isn't that the best part about this?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I'm having flashbacks to the time it's a long time ago now when I parachuted from one of these. Yeah. And we didn't have those seats in the aircraft I was in. We were all sat on the floor in between each other's legs. And the first stick got up, hooked up, and deployed. And then we went round again, and then we all got up and hooked up.
Yep.
And you're thinking, I was jumping number 12, so I was quite far down the plane. You think, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
We'll never get around to it. You know, one of those dates in your diary, you think, that'll never come up. I'll put that thing in my diary 6 months away. It'll never. It felt like that, and then suddenly
you're at the door.
You're at the door, and you go out without thinking about it.
Yep. And the nice thing about the group aspect of that with the paratroopers, you didn't want to let your buddies down.
Yeah.
So once the first guy started going, everybody got out. And if you weren't getting out, your buddies behind you were carrying you forward, and they were throwing you out of the airplane.
You feel that pressure in the airplane. You really feel it. You can't hold anyone up, let anyone down.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the thing that strikes me, Glenn, is there is a lot of space for stores here.
Well,
You know,
as we
if you're
said,
a C47 going over the jungle of Burma and you're dropping supplies.
semi-truck of the sky. I mean, the other thing that the War Department really enjoyed about looking at the DC-3 was they could see that, given the fuselage size, that when you took out the interior and all of that stuff, there was a lot of space.
There's a whole lot of
to
plane,
store
isn't
things.
there?
It's a lot of airplane, and you know, the seats that you're sitting on right now. Typically, there would be 21 seats if it was outfitted for paratroopers. That all can be removed or stowed. What we also show people when we tour the airplane is we do have a couple of hospital litters. So they would put 16 to 18 hospital litters in the airplane, and they'd have a full medical staff and turn this thing into patient transport or actually an airborne hospital.
Yeah.
That plus, you know, the cargo hauling capability. Once they saw, you know, how big the interior was and the load that this thing could carry, it was, all right, bring that over here. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. Probably one of the most versatile airplanes of the war effort.
Well, I was literally just about to say that. I'm struck by how incredibly versatile it is.
Yeah. War-winning, though.
War-winning.
It's absolute, because if logistics is the key, then this aircraft is key to logistics, right?
No, that's absolutely correct. And, you know, I just got done listening to and reading Masters of the Air about the 8th Air Force and how we cooperated together and how precision and carpet bombing were done. And, you know, basically, the war was mostly won by disrupting Germany's ability to produce and transport fuel oil. And oil for engines and stuff like that. So if you could load this thing up with big tanks of gasoline, and you could fly it to the front, and you could fuel your tanks and your artillery and your trucks, you could move the front forward faster. So in large part, war is logistics.
Yeah.
And this was the
Very
logistics.
large one. Okay, Glenn, I can't even begin to say how on message that is with what Alan and I have been saying
for the
last 6 years.
A friend of mine's grandfather flew these in Burma. Dropping supplies into 14th Army. He was shot down. They were bounced by Oscars outside Schwabo when he was on in February 1945. And his logbook just says, because he survived, shot down by Oscars, went down the jungle, rescued 4 days later. That's all it says.
That's it.
Cool as a cucumber, and then he's back flying these a couple of days later.
Yeah.
Straight back into it, because round the clock, all the time, keeping this going.
You know, these guys who flew B-17s and B-24s, they would go out in a pack because the German fighters would pick out the outer, you know, they would be able to pick off the outer ones, and then the theory was the ones on the inside would actually make it to the target.
Yeah.
So you'd go out on a Tuesday and go on a mission and watch all of your buddies die around you.
Yeah.
You'd come back Tuesday, have a snort of whiskey, go to bed, wake up in the morning, they'd serve you eggs, and they'd put you in the airplane and tell you to go do it again. So it's an amazing, amazing thing that those young people did back then.
Well, and that's what the Commemorative Air Force is all about, is reminding people, commemorating that, keeping that thought alive of what people did and what they went through.
And, you know, at our ride events, I can't tell you the number of times, you know, we do have World War II veterans that are still alive today. Family will bring them out, and they will start in my flight suit next to these classic, you know, one-of-a-kind airplanes from World War II. They'll start telling me stories that they have never, ever told their family. Yeah. And when the vet walks away and the family looks at me and says, well, why is he telling you that story? We've never... So to your point, in the logbook, it just says a couple things, but there's 3 hours of amazing feats of heroism and stories behind that they'll tell us when we're out on the road. So in that respect, we're kind of helping the family kind of understand, what did these people really do? What were the sacrifices that they made? And that is the mission of the Commemorative Air Force.
Well, Glenn, thank you so much. I mean, it's just been amazing.
It's
absolutely
fantastic.
glad.
Thank you so much.
We love talking about these things. We love showing them off, and I really am happy that you guys got a chance to get inside.
Okay.
Have fun.
Okay, Jim, hook up. We're going to jump out.
I'm ready.
Ready, set, go.
Green on, go.